Good morning, church. It is a joy to be with you this morning. And like I had mentioned, Buddy Payne is with us, and I told him, I said, when I go someplace, I'm on vacation, people say, hey, you're here, why don't you preach? I said, every once in a while, it's nice not to preach. I get to sit in the audience, and so I thought, well, we'll do that for them. They did Alaska Inside Cruise, which is just joyous. As you look at the graphic, where's your focus? If you're like me, oh man, look at those colors, and I like that color. Well, that other color, well, I like that pink better than that pink. Well, that yellow, that kind of orange. Look at that green. I don't like the other. My focus is all over the place. Glinda says I'm a little ADHD. That might be so. I have intense focus until a squirrel runs in front of me. Oh man, look at that squirrel over there. And as Paul, wait a minute. Is that your current most important objective? Yeah, but squirrel. Paul, get back on track. Okay, here's what I'm supposed to be doing. Thank you, partner. And I just had the challenge of the mic was misbehaving this morning, and so we got one of our techies to make it jump and shout. And so as I thought about that, I thought, well, if in this graphic our attention should be somewhere, where would it be? What about this? Well, there's kind of an X there. Wasn't your attention there? No, it wasn't attention there. Paul, why did you pull that out of this whole thing? Well, it's the only X in the whole graphic. And then I thought about Hebrews 12 and verse 2, fixing our eyes on Jesus. Paul, isn't that where you should be looking? Well, I do pretty much accept that. And it's life happens. It just surrounds us. And so we get distracted by other thoughts. And so here's just a handful of things that gets us to say to ourselves, am I on focus? Am I on track? Am I looking where I ought to be? That's a thing in sports, because I never had any formal training. It was just all pickup games and such as that. One lady, because I'd always heard keep your eye on the ball, but I didn't know exactly what that meant. And so up and through my young adult years, keeping my eye on the ball meant to me, watch it till it almost gets there, then take your eye off the ball, swing, and picture where you want it to go. That's not the right principle. In baseball, you should be watching it all the way to the bat. Had one guy tell me, you should be able to see and try to see the spin on the laces. I found the same thing with tennis. I'd go to make a strike. Oh, that's exciting. I can, and I'm looking over there where I want to put it. Well, I already know that side of the court doesn't change. The only thing that's moving is the ball. Paul, keep your eye on the ball. It's true in ping pong and everything else, volleyball. And so where is your focus? Well, I just like this part. Is it on, well, who is more devoted? Well, I think I am more devoted than that person over there. Well, what about that kind of thing? In Jesus, in dealing with Peter in the Gospel of John, chapter 21 and in verse 7, they'd been out fishing all night. They said, hey, that's the Lord on the shore. What is the natural thing to do? When somebody's come to visit you, jump out of the boat and start swimming. Isn't that what you do, Paul? That is not what I would do. I said, okay, we're rowing. We'll get there in a few minutes. That is so much Peter's nature. He's the one who wants to speak up. Hey, if all fall away, I'm going to be your man. He's the one that wants to build a little tabernacle, a little leafy hut for spiritual beings. He's always doing these odd things, and why we love him, because you say, maybe there would have been a different choice. And so he jumps in the water, and he starts swimming toward Jesus. And in John 21 and verse 9, the text says, there were coals burning, and fish and bread were on it. Well, I like this. Sometimes graphics have the artist's own interpretation of it. Well, this just has them. Jesus had breakfast going before they got to the shore, and I appreciated it. In John 21 and verse 10, Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you just now caught. In other words, what I had isn't really enough for the whole group, so I got the fire going. I got some of the food on. I got the bread toasting, if that's how it was being done. And 21:12, he said, come have breakfast. Well, I appreciate that. As I told Buddy Marilyn, as we left house this morning, usually there's lots of things to do, and I made sure you get your sermon and got the handout for the class, and it's all ready and blah, blah. And as I got out, Glenda said, do you want breakfast? I said, no, I'll grab a breakfast bar, a little protein bar, and that'd be fine. We get out in the car, and I'm starting on it, I said, I didn't get a breakfast bar. I said, now what are you going to do? I said, that's okay. It'll work out. I'll get something to eat. And as I get there, I was there a couple minutes ahead of them, and so I was going to buy, I said, got to get something to get a few more RPMs. So what I'll get, well, what do they got is candy bars. I'll buy I usually don't, but it's an emergency. I will buy a candy bar, and I go up to pay the lady a little bit for that. And she said, oh, well, you got a sweet tooth. I said, no, I didn't have breakfast. And so this is to get me by. And they have a little breakfast buffet. She said, go have breakfast. Really? Okay. So Glenda's in the car. I'm having scrambled eggs. I'm having hash brown potatoes. In other words, I need breakfast. I need to power up. Glenda had already had breakfast. That's why I didn't invite her in. But anyway, that's what Jesus is doing. These guys have worked all night. Jesus said, come and have breakfast. In 21:13, Jesus gave them the fish and the bread. You say, wasn't that odd for a breakfast? Well, it depends on the culture. When I was preaching in Jamaica for a while, for breakfast, rather than Cheerios and, Pop-Tarts or something we might have here, scrambled eggs, they would have ackee and salt fish. Breakfast. Ackee is a fruit, a vegetable. But when you prepare it, it looks like scrambled eggs. What's it taste? It tastes exactly like scrambled eggs. For instance, breadfruit is a thing that grows on the tree, green skin, cut it up, slice it, toast it. What's it taste like? It's exactly, not kind of like if you close your eyes, it's exactly like bread. And fish, that was what is available. And so here he is having breakfast with the disciples. And then, sometimes maybe if it's in a family, you want to talk to the kids, Junior, can I ask you about, and there's something maybe off target that he's not got right, or something he's been doing good. And Jesus says, Simon, do you love me? And the word here is agapao. Do you love me more than these? And people debate on what does he mean by these? For our standpoint, it's not going to matter. But some will say he's talking about the fish. Well, I find that odd. Jesus says, do you love me more than fish? Well, probably not. Maybe more than fishing, but most likely is than the rest of the disciples. Because in Matthew 26:33 is where Peter said, they'll all fall away. I'll not fall away. I'm your guy to the bitter end. If everybody else jumps ship, man, I'm on target. And so he says, now this is following the resurrection. Peter, do you love me that way? You're seeking my best interest, and you're familiar with, but it's interesting that he responds also in John 21:15, Lord, you know I love you, and he uses a different word, phileo. Then there's great controversy about that. All right, first of all, what language did Jesus speak? Probably scholars suggest it's Aramaic, kind of a Hebrew Syriac blend, which was the trade language. Everybody spoke that. And then, in what language, since this is John's gospel, in what language did he write? The consensus is he wrote in Greek. Paul, why do you even mention that? Because people want to argue, is there a real difference between the two words, agapao and phileo? A lot of scholars say there's no difference to it. It's just stylistic, and so it really means the same thing because you'll find the same words used in a similar or same kind of context. Well, it's just like if you really care about somebody, you want to act in their best interest, and you like them. It's not that idea of agape, the noun or the verb for agapao, as I hate their guts, but I'll do it because God tells me to. So, okay, I love them. Well, wait a minute. That's still not exactly on track. Because this word agapao, one of the lexicons, Louw-Nida, says it means to have a high regard for, their value, and a concern for them. Think about whoever is your most ardent enemy. They're an individual, they've got a soul, they've got a life, they may be on the wrong track. Jesus said, pray for your enemies. Do I care? Yeah, I'm praying for everyone, but that one, man, that guy, I got to pray. Lord, smite him. Paul, do you have the right attitude? No, that's not the right attitude. Lord, well, they may have a few problems, and I'm not in the mood to pray very much for them, but you know what they need. Then later I'll come back, Lord, I'm the one that's upside down. They need to be blessed, regardless of what they think of me. So that idea of agapao is acting in the best interest, but it's more than just doing it. Is my attitude, like Thayer says, to regard the welfare of. What is really good for them? And then the word phileo, Vine's Expository Dictionary says, it more relates to tender affection, lo and nida, a love based on association. That lots of people, I just banged the mic for a second time once in an announcement, so I just keep my hand behind my back. So lots of people here I've known for 50 years, over 50 years, been friends for 40 years with. People I know and cherish that I would die for, they would die for me. And so it's friendship, and it's all more than that. And Jesus is saying, Peter, are you acting in my best interest? And Peter said, Lord, man, I care a lot for you, and I'm not exactly on track, but you know I think so highly of you. And Jesus says, tend my lambs. That it doesn't say, you're a creep and a loser. Why did I ever choose you? Back of the bus. He doesn't do that. You recognize you weren't exactly on track. Get on track. And let's start going in that right direction. So who's most devoted? Well, my attitude needs to be, Lord, they are so devoted. They are so good. I'm just one of the oarsmen pulling at the oar. Where is my focus? Is it on, what about the future? And what's the future hold versus me? Yeah, but look what you get. Should it be on the other person or what the Lord's telling me? In John 21 and verse 18, Jesus says to Peter, when you are old, you will stretch out your hands. I've been like, well, man, you're putting the cuffs on. And someone else will lead you where you do not want to go. And then John tells us, 21:19, indicating the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. I don't know if you have, maybe. I have thought since young life, I had several people that meant a great deal to me die when I was young. And all my life I've thought about, in my teen years, I thought, yeah, well, Paul, what if this is the end of your life at 19? What about 21? And so one of the things that crosses my life that you never know is I want to die well, meaning I want to be courageous. I want to give others hope. Whatever happens, I want it to be a blessing. I don't want to say, oh, the old guy did real good except for the last 21 days, man, and then it was what a train wreck. And so, because how we conduct ourselves in life and in death, and we all face it, really impacts others. And so in 21:10, then Jesus having said that, Peter turned and saw the disciple whom the Lord loved, and that would have been John, following behind. And verse 21, when Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? And that famous response in 21:2, Jesus answered and said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. Yeah, but what if he lives longer? What if he doesn't face the hard time? What? That has zero to do with you. Your job is get on track. Batter up. You're on deck. And you need to conduct yourself in the best possible way that you know how. Yeah, but the other guy didn't. It doesn't matter what the other guy. What's on track for me? Am I doing the best that I can? Whether in sports or in marriage or spiritual or anything. Are you giving God the best you have? Somebody else can always do better and somebody else can do worse. You just do the best that you can do. And rather let somebody else's situation be the Lord's concern. Where is our focus? Is it on who's doing all the work? And so here's this famous one with Mary and Martha in Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Martha welcomed him, that is Jesus, into her home. And she had a sister called Mary who was listening to the Lord's word, seated at his feet. And I appreciated this graphic because that shows, here's Martha, she got a mixing bowl, as it were, shows she's doing something, she's mixing up the whatever it is. And so Mary is just listening to Jesus, and Martha was distracted with all her preparation. And she came to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister left me to do all the serving alone? Tell her to help me. Glenn and I have a different attitude of what preparation is necessary when we have company. Here's my preparation. And we shared this back when we had a couple of rangers with us. I invited them over for steak. And we had a barbecue. And so I don't know anything about steak, so I asked the butcher lady. She picked them out. She said, you're going to like ribeye. I said, great. What about seasoning? She picked the seasoning. I said, that's great. So the guys came on over, and I said, either you guys know how to barbecue? Yeah, I do. I said, okay, there's the steaks. So the steaks are grilling, and Glenda said, where's the rest of it? I said, the rest of what? She said, to the meal. I said, what meal? I invite them for steaks. And so she said, no, you got to have potatoes, you got to have salad. Not in my book. From my standpoint, if there's a path through the house is clean. If you invite them for meat. Glenda and you women would have a little bit more going for you on what all the pieces of the puzzle are. So here's Martha. She's the hostess. She wants to have the house, I'll say, clean, have all the food ready, the table set, and everything organized. And Martha's doing it. And what's Mary doing? Mary's listening to the word. Well, Martha's upset. Man, I got all this stuff, and she's not helping. And Jesus' great reply, Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you're worried and bothered about so many things, but only a few things are necessary. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken from her. Sometimes we get so focused on the stuff that the most important thing gets shortchanged. It may be, yeah, they got to have the lawn mowed and the silverware polished. What about the kids? What about time with them? What about time with you and God? I looked at it and said, my lawn needs mowing. Why? There's some grass. I said, Paul, that's not the most important thing. Do the most important thing. I'll get to it maybe this coming week. But focus on the priorities. Who's doing the work? I'm glad to work. I like working. I like helping people and making things better. And what you want to know is that they get the credit. Why? Because they'll work more if they get the credit. Because, man, he did a great job. Great. Well, that's Henry did all that. Me, I was just there for the good looks. And so where is our focus? Is it on who's more righteous? And that famous one from Luke 18 and verse 10, Jesus is actually a parable. He's not watching two individuals at the moment. And two men went up to the temple to pray, and one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. Anybody ever had a tax collector over for pizza? No, me either. I've had a tax collector in my house checking the details of my finances because I put something in the wrong box, and blah, blah, blah. You want to make sure, are you just a liar or just an idiot? No, just an idiot. I didn't know where to put it in, so I put it there. And so, but having said that, I appreciated that he showed me mercy, but I never invited him back for pizza. I'm not interested in spending time with tax collectors. And so, in the temple, the Pharisee stood praying to himself. The sense seems to be meaning quietly. He's not just saying, hey, I pray to me. But he prays to himself and says, God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, swindlers and unjust and adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all I get. God, I want to tell you, I got it together. Well, good for you, bud. I thought it was interesting when he said, I fast twice a week. You may be familiar. There was only one mandated fast the whole year on the Day of Atonement. He said, I want to tell you, man, I fast 100 times a year. Well, you get that out of the rabbi saying that's what we think you ought to do in their commentary, the Midrash. And there's a particular version of it and whatnot. And they say fast twice a week. In fact, they'll tell you what days to fast is on Monday and Thursday. And he's just saying, God, I do all the stuff. And 1813, the tax gatherer, standing some distance away, was unwilling to lift his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. That article is actually in the Greek. I thought, well, because different people translate a sinner. But the article, the, seems to be the predominant use of that. He's not just saying, well, God, I hope you go easy on me. You know, I'm just like everybody else. He said, no, I'm not like everybody else. I'm significantly worse, and I know it. And I am so sorry. We go to God and say, God, I'm so sorry. I failed you in X or Y. I so much want to do better. Father, be merciful to me, the sinner. And Jesus said in 1814, this man went down to his house justified. Why? Rather than the other. The other guy didn't ask for forgiveness. Why? I'm so cool, I don't need it. The other guy knows. And some people say, I'm way past that. I can never be forgiven. You can be forgiven. God's got a plan, and you're the people. And so Jesus said that everyone who exalts himself shall be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Saying, God, they are so good. You are so great. And I am not. And I am so sorry. Help me to do better. When your children say, Mom or Dad, please forgive me. I was wrong. Your heart just breaks for them. And that's God telling us, you can be forgiven. You can get on the right track. But where's our focus? Is it on who gets the recognition? In Luke 15:22, regarding the prodigal son, the father said, quickly bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found. And they began to make merry. Well, you know, the problem is that the older brother, man, he does not see it that way. So the older son, in brackets, says, for so many years I've been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours. And you've never given me a kid. You never given me a 30-pound goat. I mean, you talk about getting shortchanged. That I might be merry with my friends. But when this son of yours, and not my brother, your son, whom devoured your wealth with harlots, you kill the fatted calf. You got a 300-pound animal, and oh yeah, Junior comes home, and that's a big deal. And the father has to say, look, all that I have is yours, but not just my son, your brother was dead and has come to life, was lost and has been found. If our attitude was somebody gets all scrambled up, say, yeah, well, I just don't associate with them because I don't want them to think that, hey, I approve of what they did. What they did was terrible. But is there somehow some law of penance that, like, for the next 8 years you got to sit in the corner and don't lift your eye? Or do we go to them and say, I'm so sorry, Henry or Susie or whoever. And I just want you to know, if any way I can help, I'd be glad, I'd be honored to give a help. Because they were dead and they've come to life. This is a child of God that made a mess out of their life. But they're trying to get on track. So where's our focus? Do we love Jesus more than friends, more than finances, more than recreation, more than life? Is that really where we are? In 1 Corinthians 16:22, that passage where it said, if anyone, this is New International Version, it's even more stark. If anyone does not love, and that word is phileo, that high regard, tender affection from close association, if anyone does not love phileo the Lord, a curse be on him. That's how stark it is. I mean, there's two roads. There's one of many paths. We said, Lord, you are my Lord, and I am dedicated. So then if you say, well, yeah, I love Jesus more than all that, then you prove it. How do you do that? Jesus said, Peter, tend my lambs. That is, watch out for the other saints. Follow Jesus regardless. Yeah, but look at what Morton is doing over there. It doesn't matter what he's doing. Serve Jesus in choosing what's the priority. Imitate Jesus, being genuinely humble. It's not about me. It's never about me. It's always about him. And then you rejoice with him as the fallen return. And so as Dina introduced me to Kingston, so thankful, so joyous to have you as a brother in Christ. And the new ones, wherever they be, and Ronell halfway back. Ronell's so good to have you. She's growing and trying. And because for all of us, we're becoming that new creature. And if you've never been baptized in Christ and said, this is the morning and I'm ready, I want to have my focus right. Think about that. We're going to stand and sing this song. Interestingly, we hadn't discussed it, but it was the song that was sung when I was baptized at 18 in Cleveland, Trust and Obey. If that's the allegiance you're ready to offer to the Lord, we've got the opportunity. You've never been baptized, the water's here. If you'd like to become part of the congregation, if you'd like us to pray, we'd do anything we can to help you. Brother Mike, why don't you lead us? Congregation, let us be standing.